the all the information you've got there, you see, that's going at 30 frames per second at, what's that, 2,500 kilobytes per second. It's not bad. It's not a bad jitter, but it's just you never quite know what's going. But it doesn't matter. If needs be, I'll come down. I'll kind of record this for them in another way. But we'll still do the walk. Is it lovely just to sort of see? I love the way the light just catching on the Minster now.
It's working.
Oh, fantastic! Oh, great, fantastic. So hopefully they'll come on and they'll find us. There's somebody just connected now, so hopefully that is now a better streaming experience for people. So we're walking up Presenters Court. Presenters, by the way. Hi, Lethargy. So hopefully I've gone out and gone in. Hopefully that will encourage you. So we're at the bottom of Presenters Court. And presenter is the person whose role it is to be in charge of the music. Hi, Sarah. In charge of the music at the Minster. So hopefully coming back in now, that's better for people. So this is Presenters Court. So we're at the west end of the Minster, and we are walking around and walking through, hi again, through the snickleways route. So the snickleways first appeared in York in 1982, and it was a chap by the name of Mark W. Jones. And what's interesting is that Mark wrote these books when York was still actually a place where cars could drive, believe it or not, right the way through pretty much the middle of it. Apart from a tiny bit, the shambles you couldn't drive down Stonegate, the rest of the city was cars. And I know Catherine, who's with us, who's joining me again, might not be aware. Catherine, our resident kind of house artist, is here. And you will have visited York in the 80s.
Yes.
Do you remember the cars?
Yes, definitely. Yes, it was a popular venue for a school trip.
So a kind of a busy sort of city centre, the York that you guys have come to appreciate and see as the norm isn't reflective of York before it's pedestrianised. And so the ambition of Mark W. Jones, the author of this book, was to create city centre walkways that allowed you to escape from the noise, the traffic, the poor air, I suppose. And so in some respects, the snickleways aren't needed in the way they originally anticipated, because we now get to enjoy York without motorised vehicles every day of the week, which is absolutely fabulous. But actually, snickleways haven't gone away. They were first published in 1982 in a book, but they've continued on. The book has never been out of print. I believe it's now its kind of 10th edition. And even though Mark Jones died a number of years ago, his family have kind of continued on with this, updating it, changing it, because it is such a wonderful publication. And I thought it'd be fun to do this today with Catherine, because obviously Catherine is an artist. And for those who haven't seen, his kind of visual style, it's very similar sort of Wainwright, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. Yes.
How do you kind of describe the sort of style of drawing?
Just ink. It'll be drawn with either a dip pen and pen dipping into a bottle of ink, or maybe a fountain pen. But that would be classed as just ink drawing.
So what we have in we've got lovely handwriting as well. I'll just open this up so you can get a sense. We're going to walk down and explore some of it. He puts the roots in there. He puts historical information, but he's got lovely handwriting, hasn't he?
Yeah.
You can't hear Catherine too well. So is your microphone on?
Can you hear me now? I was wondering if he was influenced by Wainwright, because it's got a very much a Wainwright feel, hasn't it? He's a popular guidebook author, I would guess you would say, for the English literature.
Yeah, I would think it would be absolutely, visible and known to Mark Jones. Sorry, we're still waiting for my main microphones to come back from the kind of repair shop. So these ones, they do a job, but they're not kind of good. But just do bear with as best we can. We'll put big booming voice on if needs be. I'll get my headphones out and I'll just do it that way. But so a route has been designed that takes us around the city centre. Which, as I say, in the 1980s was an attempt to get away from cars. Now, the route is still every bit as lovely today, but obviously we don't really have to contend with cars. So, in some respects, snickleways have probably kind of had their day, and yet they continue to enchant us. And the name with the connection here is poor. Okay, let's do what we can. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to just plug in my earphone.
Oh,
Cheap rubbish, unfortunately.
trees as well.
It's normally okay around here, but let's just. I think I'm back in. Did I miss Catherine? Love all Catherine's work, says Marlin. So I'm just going to put my earphones in, and hopefully that will work then. It's not a very noisy day, so. Working with John now, absolutely. So Tish, Catherine is here with me. We're enjoying the sunshine here in York. So I'm just going to put in my earphones just to improve with everything. Snaggle, isn't it? So we're coming into the area known as Minster Yard. Any fans of Gentleman Jack, if you watched the last 2 seasons, did an awful lot of the filming in this street round here. Bit of clever sort of computer trickery, as you might say, but very, very easy, of course, to... Nice and loud now. Pig is very fuzzy. Goodness me, I can't please anybody, can I, today? Dissatisfaction guaranteed seems to be the order of the day. But let us persevere as best we can. Every quick 7:20 helps a bit. Just bear with me. I'll just plug in these earphones in, and then we'll do our best from there. And hopefully they will be able to pick up.
Good for me.
Yeah. Okay. So let me just plug in, and then we'll push on. Right. You'll get my vocal on there, and if you speak up, we should be able to hear off this mic as well. So we're going to continue down. We're going to follow the route of the snickleways. On our left-hand side, hi Linda, thank you for that. We now have the treasurer's house. If the garden's open, should we? Oh, it won't be open to 5 o'clock. Looking absolutely beautiful in the sunlight. The treasurer's house, of course, was the home of the person whose job it was to fundraise for building and maintaining this, which was quite a job. It's a good job people believed in those days that you'd buy your way into heaven. Otherwise, it would be a heck of a job, wouldn't it, of building this scale. You been in the Minster, Catherine?
Not today, not this time, but I have before, yes.
Yeah. Have you painted the Minster?
I have, well, just the little bits of it, so not the grand scale.
Not all of it. That'd be greedy, wouldn't it? All of it in one go.
I cheated with the picture I showed you earlier. It's just got the turret on. Tower.
So the route tells us we've got to follow this now round to our left-hand side, and all the visual is clear. Oh, that's good, fantastic. So we're down now into first Chapped House Street. So the Chapped House, of course, is the bit we're looking at in the Minster there. You've got a pointed sticky roof up at the top, and the earliest completed section of the Minster completed in 1290. The Chapped House is where the Dean and Chapter meet. The canon lawyers, they all sit around the edge and have their meetings in the Chapped House. And let us head down through Chapped House Street. So again, car-free, very quiet. And it's unbelievable for those that experience it for the first time you can have the full hubbub of York literally 100 feet away.
It's amazing.
But there's a stillness, isn't there?
Lovely.
Yeah. That just doesn't reflect the fact that you're right in the centre of the city. And that's one of the lovely things about the snickleways routes is you'll find peace, serenity, and if you keep your eyes open as well, just some lovely decorative details. It's always good to just cast your eyes upwards and just see what York has to offer. Postbox George, absolutely GR, so GR Rex, of course, the George Rex. So always looking upwards. Everything, of course, looks beautiful up against the blue sky. 1290, yes, absolutely, so amazing the detail. Passing Gray's Inn Court, we visited Gray's Inn, and for occasion the Treasurer's House rear, the famous hotel. We've seen the lovely gardens from the walls where you can sit and have your afternoon tea. That's in the courtyard down there. And the whole thing is just so easy on the eye, isn't it?
It is. Perfect. Couldn't have had a better day for it,
But so individual as well. There's no two bits are the same. It's not like, we all were bowled over by the beauty of a Paris or the New Town in Edinburgh, where everything is kind of precise, and the avenues, or even New York, of course, these great long vistas. New York's not like that.
It's a bit of Durham in lots of ways. They used to
Durham.
Three streets.
Yeah, I don't know how well you can pick up Catherine, because obviously she's... no, it's great. I'm not sure where to move the audio. But Catherine was just saying how much it reminds her of Durham, which is a charming place we've been, of course, and toured up in Durham. It's just that lovely feel, isn't it, of idiosyncratic history, little corners, and of course lots of converted. So here we've got an old brewery buildings, converted now into wonderful holiday accommodation for people to come and stay in the city. Got the famous Dutch house here. I'm going to have to check the routes now. In fact, would you mind just looking over? Let's find out where we're kind of routed. So we should be on map 1 of a hole in the wall. We've been through the hole in the wall. So we are now, we've done this one, so we're on to map 2. So this is what's nice about this, is it's got a self-guide round the city. And we've done Minster Yard, so we're on map 3. I'm making you work. Look at that old brownies there, you see the age of that picture there.
I used to look like
Was you a brownie?
I was a brownie.
Was you a brownie? Little pom-pom hat, even in summer, but this would be hot in the summer, I think. So we want to be on Gudrum, Oglethorpe, yeah, that's where we are, into Gudrum Gate, and looks like Beden is our next one. So yep, let's keep going.
Sure.
Could you? Is that right? Do you want to pop your phone away? Don't you drop that? So my able assistant now has got the book. So the book, Linda, is called The Snickleways of York. It's the complete Snickleways of York. You can get various versions, but this basically is one of Tree's friends. Thank you for your coffees, by the way, Tree. That's lovely. One of her friends, a professor at Durham University. So this basically is a map and a route of the city that enables us to follow basically a route that was planned out in 1982. It's varied a little bit ever since, but it's just a fun way to see the city, and of course to see much of the history and the variations. So we are coming, when we come up to the junction here, for those that probably think you recognise it, Dutch House, we've talked about and seen on tours in the past in York. A wonderful Flemish imitation property, dating from the very early parts of the 17th century here in York. Snickleway, absolutely. So Snickleway is what they call a portmanteau word. Now, portmanteau is where things are sort of bolted together. Yeah. And it comes from 3 words, and I bet you'll recognise these if you've been a northerner. So snicket, ginnel, and alleyway.
I recognise alleyway.
Right. Okay. So some are from the north, some from the northwest, and so forth. And so put them together, snicket, ginnel, alleyway, we get snickleway.
Right.
And so it's a word that Mark Jones invented. So this author here of the book, his lovely line drawings, is Mark Jones, and he created this idea of a snickleway. And a snickleway was basically a traffic-free way of seeing the city. So you can see we've got Monk Bar over here on our left-hand side, but we're going to turn to the right. We're going to head down towards Beden. So we're on now into Gudrum Gate, fairly near the Minster, just behind us, and we're going to take another route down. So we've taken this route, I believe, maybe once or twice on the tours, but I thought it would be kind of nice to follow this route today. And particularly as Catherine is with us, and Catherine obviously is an artist admiring the work of this kind of predecessor who's captured York, and of course looking herself and thinking, where am I going to go and where am I going to kind of capture images of yourself, right?
No pressure to get it to look like this.
No, none whatsoever, no. So our next snickleway is just tucked away underneath the scaffolding here, which is great, so you can get us away from the people, so you can see pretty busy here. Obviously, pretty much the end of summer now, summer holidays are over, kids back at school this week. But with the weather, of course, one last very busy weekend in York. But we don't need to concern ourselves with that, because we are stepping off once more into Beden. So Beden is Anglo-Saxon term meaning place of prayer. So Beden Hall, we're going to see in just one moment. Before we do, we're going to see the chapel. And this was the chapel of the Vicars Choral. And this was a community of monks and clerics who worked at the Minster but came together to pray. So the College of Vicars Choral, so they sang masses. It's now the home of the Glazers Trust, so it's a place where you can go and obviously see repaired, sort of restored glass. So you can see here Beden, Anglo-Saxon meaning house of prayer, Beda. Now Beden Hall, people often talk about the, and there's a picture of it just here, I think, yeah, fantastic. People often talk about, isn't it amazing, the buildings of York? And perhaps we do a slight disservice because we don't necessarily always reflect on the restoration. So I want to just show you, just before we kind of go around and see the building as it is right now, this is what Beden Hall looked like in the 1970s. Sorry about the gimbal's not kind of entirely straight. But you can see, even though clearly it's an old building, it is not, in any way in kind of good shape. But when I bring you around the corner, it shows that it's slightly deceptive in some ways, York. In fact, yes, we've got lots of wonderful old buildings, but that's because they've been restored. So that building you were looking at just there is this building you're now looking at right here. So consequently, York hasn't just arrived at this state because looked after it. It was the opposite. These are buildings that were disused, unwanted. They had no kind of use for them, no design for them. So it was only really when people had an interest in the history of the city came and then restored these buildings that they attained the qualities that we now see in them. And if we look kind of closely at this, we can see there's brickwork in and amongst the medieval stone. It's a good job, isn't it?
It is.
It's done a really nice job of restoration. And this building historically was the refectory college of the vicars, so the choral, and they would come here and have their meals. But what happened was, after the Reformation, a couple of things happened. Of course, we moved from being a Catholic nation to a Protestant nation, but also the clerics, such as they were allowed to get married. And so they started to marry. As a result, they'd have wives and families. They didn't need somewhere to come for meals. And so the demand for food collectively in the refectory fell away, and the Beden Hall, as a result, wasn't in demand and closed down. It's now used as all manner of kind of community facilities, meetings, weddings, parties, functions, and it is an absolutely wonderful place. But just goes to show. So in front of us, it looks like we've got a children's party, so we better be quiet. We've got another snickaway coming up that'll take us around St Andrew Gate, so we can kind of get round there. So St Andrew Church, what a now disused church, what is now used as a not a popular, I can't think what they call it now, Episcopal church in York, Evangelist church. But it's been through kind of various guises, and again, it's a church that's been much kind of patched up over the years. It's a little bit tatty and some quite cheap repairs done there. So we're just going to coming through St Andrew Gate. So this is where we are now. We're on map number 7 of the Snickleways, if you want to follow. And we're following up this is called St Andrew Gate. I'm sure many of you will know. See, that shop doesn't exist anymore. Newit's. See, shop Snickets. These were the wet weather routes that you could actually go through shops if it was raining, but that shop doesn't exist anymore. So you can't go through that one. And you got get rid of books. Oh, it's so painful getting rid of books, don't you think? Are you a hoarder by nature?
A little bit.
A little bit, yeah. I think we've all kind of got that tendency. So there's a Harry Potter story, so we're going to whisper as we go down here. So we'll get out of the way. And we don't want to cut across the enjoyment of all the families. So watch this rail, because it is an absolute soft tripping over. We'll just whip down here. So Teresa's trying to clear out a lifetime accumulation. It's a very short passage, this one, by comparison, which just takes us around St Andrew's Church. So Andrew's has been absolutely, it's a really low cost version. The version I've got is, I think, from the early 1990s. So it's horribly out of date is my version. And the ones you'll get will be much more up to date and will kind of tell you where it is that you... So are we now... Right, okay, so we're straight onto the market. So a lot of the routes on mine are all closed. What's nice about my copy is, I think if we go just... You think the one that... right to the beginning, is it's signed to me, you see, to John from Mark Jones. So obviously that's why I've kept this one rather than update it. And I say, no longer with us, sadly, but an absolute kind of titan of York. And one of the kind of early kind of visionaries, along with a chap by the name of Albert Cowan, who was an elected member here, sadly again no longer with us, who were the visionaries that really fought for pedestrianisation. And it's easy to think now of what success pedestrianisation is, that people must have rejoiced in it. But they fought like cat and dog to keep it away. You know, it was going to kill the city centre, no one wanted it.
Yeah.
You know what people are like, same now, right? Yeah. As soon as you say someone can't drive somewhere, you know, the uproar that you get is and I guess that's global, right? It's not just a York thing. But, you know, it was such a negative response. And yet you'd struggle now to find anybody that wouldn't said, it's what makes York so special is you can walk around the streets. So, you know, thanks to Mark Jones, to Albert Cowan, to these visionaries that were prepared to, you know, kind of take the flak, as you might say, and stick the neck out and say, let's just flipping try it. And that's where snickleways come from. Snickleways was, this is a beautiful city that is being ruined by traffic. So here's a way of avoiding the traffic. But better still, let's get rid of the traffic altogether.
Yeah.
Let's pedestrianise it. So I suppose the kind of early green sort of thinking, really, before green was sort of fashionable, these people were saying there's something uniquely special, interesting about York that we can really celebrate just by taking to our feet, leaving our cars, having a world without metal boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah? So you might remember we've been down here on the catwalk. Did you come on the catwalk with us, Catherine?
I don't think so. No, I don't think
So just a little kind of reminder. We pop up there. We've got the wonderful cats of York. But we're going straight, because I think we're going down Newgate, aren't we? Is that right? So I think we're on the previous one.
so.
St Andrew Gate, Newgate. Yep, okay. So these lovely old pictures of York now, since the early 90s. So this is where we're heading next, into Newgate and Patrickpool by the market. So people are absolutely, naturally people love biking in York because it's so flat. So consequently, as you go along, you'll see lots of bike racks. Unfortunately, bike theft is always an issue, as you saw from the case in the city. So you have to be careful about keeping your bike secure. But other than that, yeah, it's very, very flat, so very easy. One or two, railway bridges and so forth to get over, but for the most part, incredibly easy to sort of cycle around here. So it's an absolute kind of cyclist delight. So yes, we have a lot higher kind of rates of cycling perhaps than you'd enjoy as a standard. So where are we going here? We're going to St Sampson's Square. Oh, I know where we're going, yeah. It's just like I've looked at, no, we're going to cut the top of the shambles. I think we'll come to the shambles later. As ever, in King's Square, we find live entertainment. There's been over 1,000 years of history of live entertainment on the streets of York. And people have always come to York looking for entertainment, as well as nice things to eat, great places to stay. Hospitality is part and parcel of it. And what we tend to get is a very high calibre of street entertainment in York, as well as tour guides, but I would say that, wouldn't I? Because basically, if you're not, you get found out very quickly. And there's always somebody that is prepared to put in the work. So, I think we'll pop back to the shambles in a bit, but for the meantime, we're going to continue following the route. So we're going down Newgate, we're coming into the market area, and they want us to take a right down Patrickpool, which is lovely. So we've been down here on one or two tours, the Shambles Night Market, you may all recall. So Shambles Market is a great success story. It still runs every day in the city, and all year round. It's not just a periodical or once a week market, it's a daily market. But we're swinging away from the marketplace now into Patrickpool, a lovely building over here on our left hand side, fabulous jetted medieval building. We're working towards the Swinegate, the pig market area, but I believe we're going through St Sampson's Square first. St Sampson's Centre. So to the left, yeah. So this is where we are now. We are on Patrickpool. So we're right here in the centre now, very near the market. The wonderful Valhalla Bar on the left hand side. St Sampson's Church here, the famous medieval church in the city, and was very much linked with the fire and brimstone preaching of the Puritans. The very much Puritan church. So it's wanting us to go to the left down here. Okay. So we're on Church Street now, one of the few streets in the city centre that is not named a gate. As you'll probably be aware, the vast majority of streets in the city are named gates. Garter, Nordic Street, obviously indicating that they were named during the period of kind of Danish, Viking, and Anglo-Saxon sort of settlement. Nice doorway, as you see here. Ian's on, see that later. There you go, see you, Ian Braisby. Nice medieval gateway. And I think it wants us to go down three. Is that sending us down 3 cranes? You go to map 7, if you would. So Catherine and I are all work cut out here. I'm making it work for it. 3. Yeah, it wants us to go. Yeah. It's a funny one. It's not always open, so we'll just see. It's a lovely Victorian. Is it going to allow us to go 3 Cranes Lane? We're about to find out. If not, we'll just go straight across to Hornpot. So on St Sampson Square now, which is the Thursday market, a livestock market. That's closed off. I think. Is it open? Oh yeah. Looks like it is. And of course, 3 Cranes Lane. We get a lot of rubbish put down here. But that's always how they were treated, these alleyways. Yeah, they were dumping grounds. They were insanitary. They were the places, of pickpockets and vagabonds, of streetwalkers, of ladies of ill repute, and mean guys that would cut you for your wallet as soon as look at you. The kind of ripped backside of a city. But that's why I think they kind of evoke such an interest in us, because we can imagine the hustle, the bustle, the movement, supply the markets, the evening trade. It's so, you get the feel, don't you think? Yeah. There's something about it. Is it one to the left now? We're going to Coffee Yard.
Swinegate?
Yeah, let's do to Swinegate, yeah. So we're to Swinegate now, to literally the pig market. And it's, we're going up, Swinegate.
Mad Alice Lane?
Oh, it wants to go down there, is it? Okay. So it wants us to go mad.
Well,
Oh no, I see. It means I know what I mean. Yeah. Sorry, map. You'd think I'd have brought a map I could read, wouldn't you? That would have been
I've got my glasses.
a good. And I haven't got my brain in, so thank you for Catherine for gamely agreeing to hold this up while I do my best to reacquaint myself with something that I should have looked at and read before. But it's been a while. So we're coming into the wonderfully titled Mad Alice Lane. Very sad story. Mad Alice, a woman who was abused, treated very shabbily, lived in abject poverty in the 1820s in this street. She lived. It's actually a story that Mark Jones gets wrong in his book, because there's no record of her being hanged. It appears that she was put in the asylum, but that she was a victim of domestic abuse. She was married to a violent Irishman named William Smith, who sent her out onto the streets to earn her living, and then took the money she earned from her dalliances with men, but then would viciously beat her. And of course, living in an area such as this, very built up, very congested, people knew what was going on. They could hear, they knew exactly what the situation was with this violent alcoholic, and seeing her bruises and knowing what was going on, normally behind closed doors, but really in plain sight, living in these courtyards where everybody knew everybody else's business. And it's said that one day she snapped, she took the bread knife, cut it through his heart, and that was the end of that problem. But of course she'd created another. She was now on trial for murder, and of course in the 1820s the sentence was only possibly going to be death. She was convicted, and of course her trial would normally have lasted maybe 2 or 3 hours. There was no criminal defence of people of the lower classes, but interestingly it seems that somebody took an interest and somebody began to fund a defence. And the neighbours were called upon, and all of them came forward and saying what a rotten bloke this Smith was. He treated her shabbily, she was a victim, and so gradually a picture began to emerge of Alice Smith not as the perpetrator of a violent crime, a petty larceny against her husband, but rather a victim who'd been pushed so far, eventually she snapped. And it was requested of the court that they were able to return a verdict of, in effect, insanity. Even though that didn't exist, there was no verdict of insanity in that time. Somehow the judge agreed. And so Mad Alice, as she became known, not mad in a pejorative way, but mad as in driven mad by her treatment at the hands of this violent alcoholic, was treated instead with sympathy. And she was sent to York Asylum, where she lived out the rest of her days. So it may not be a particularly happy ending for Alice, what's interesting is this was at a time when women were treated as little more than possessions of their husbands. It was ultimately that was locked. We can't go down there. That would yeah. So we'll cut off that corner and go down the shambles now. See what we're doing for time. So at this time, women would have been little more than. Let me show. I'm just trying to see because we can't go down one of them. Would have been little more of possessions. Really, the men could have treated them however they wanted to do so. So it's got a remarkable bit of kind of forward thinking. The law didn't really catch up for another 150 years or so. And see. Oh, this is going down Stonegate. Is it? Okay, we'll go back up Goodrham Gate. So unfortunately, we cannot go through. They did step in the end and sort of saved her kind of reputation. But as I say, what was interesting was in effect they created a legal precedent in saying that there was value to her life, even though, of course, she didn't really enjoy any advantages in her life. Nonetheless, her life was held to have some meaning. She was allowed to have some dignity and was treated as ultimately a victim. So what we'd normally be doing, or what we'll try and do on this route, is to cut through Holy Trinity Church. But as that's closed, we're just going to walk up this bit and then we're going to follow the route back up. I think it is heartwarming story, Sandy. Yeah, it's very unusual for that sort of time as well. Very, very easy to judge, a woman who was in effect a streetwalker, a prostitute, or whatever you call her, as just being immoral and deserving of everything that happened to her. But it wasn't the case. It didn't actually happen in that way. So I think we can be rather grateful to the far-sighted people of York of the early part of the 19th century that felt they wanted to put on record their sense that injustice had been done. So this is one we've had to miss out because it is locked up for today. It's the wonderful Holy Trinity route through. Again, we've been there on York Unlocked. Hopefully we'll get there again this year on York Unlocked, which is next month. But in the meantime, we'll wander back up Goodrham Gate. I think, is it sending us now around College Street, Queen's Path? Okay. So we're just sort of passing, we passed Beden on our kind of, we're going to pass it on our right-hand side in a minute. And it's a nice little story actually about Beden. And the Vicars Choral that were based at Beden were known, surprisingly, even though they were a bunch of clerics and monks, were known to be what you might call worldly, insofar as they like nothing more than drinking, gambling, cavorting with women, fighting, thieving, you name it. You look at the records of the courts of the time. Members of the Vicars Choral in York were notorious for their poor behaviour. And part of the problem was that this area we're coming into now was a notorious area of vice in medieval York. Whatever you wanted, you'll get it here. Whether that was, cheap alcohol, gambling, partners of any particular persuasion, it was available here. The reason being, we're about on the gateway, the snickleway in, absolutely. Snickleway in. And the reason was we're on the gateway to the Minster. And of course, people going into the Minster would have the money for making, donations. So what these people were trying to do was kind of basically waylay people on the way into the Minster and, if you like, get that money off them instead, you see. So it was a great place. So all around here, dice tables, ladies of ill repute, and probably men of ill repute as well. And so part of the problem was that because these monks that lived in Beden Chapel but worked in the Minster were rather too easily distracted by what was going on the streets. And it became a problem because people had paid huge sums of money for these monks to be in the church saying prayers for the souls of the dead, what's called intercession prayers. But unfortunately, they were more often down the alleyways, in the gambling dens, and out enjoying themselves. And so the senior clerics came up with what I think is a brilliant solution. And we can just see the traces just here as we come around the corner. Is if you look at this building right in the centre of your picture now with the blue National Trust shop, the one next to it, you see up there's an outcrop of a building stuck out at the top, right? And that is what's left of a bridge that was built across this road, so from here across to Beden Chapel, just behind this scaffolding here, so they could get the monks backwards and forwards into the Minster precinct without walking on the streets and getting embroiled. So if you think sex scandals in the church is a new thing, far from it. As long as there's been people, there's been temptation, and of course, what is sin and redemption without temptation? Makes sense, right? That's the whole point, is refraining from temptation, not the absence of temptation. So there we go. So snickleways tell some interesting stories in York. So this Queen's Path, named after the Queen, which came and gave out Maundy money, I think in the 1960s, Queen Elizabeth, of course, II. So we're going to follow the Queen's Path. So we're now at the east end of the Minster. If you're on the screen, I can't read it at all because of the bright sunshine, but what a lovely day to be out here.
I was sat on that bench earlier trying to sketch this building, so I didn't get very far with it.
So we've been here many times, of course. So we're in that beautiful St William's College, lovely compound of a group of buildings, isn't it? So we are here on map 9 of the Snickleways, College Street, Queen's Park. So the Queen's Park over on this side, recently renovated, so it's looking resplendent. And we're going to follow the path, called the Queen's Path, right by the side of the Minster. So we're going to go from the east end of the Minster around to the southern face of the Minster. Face Fisher White Eyes. Monks gambling. Absolutely, yeah, monks gambling. Yeah, the thing was with the monks is there were so many of them, and people working in the church that you couldn't necessarily guarantee you were going to get all people of a particularly holy disposition. It was just a job in those days for a lot of people, and because people absolutely fervently believed that your way into heaven was via the church, huge amounts of money was passed to the church, so it was a lot easier to just give monks and clerics a coin and say, pray for me. So they'd be walking along jangling with cash, because this is how people believed that the best way to attain a place in heaven was. So consequently, they were very wealthy, and with disposable income, they basically frittered it on the ways of the flesh, as they might say. Well, there you go, you see. You thought you were doing spectacle, didn't you? And now you're going to find out what a tatty old lot we are. So here we are. Yeah, so I'll just show this sign here, this one. So on the Queen's Path. So in 1972, the Queen came here. And bear in mind, in 1972, you could have driven cars, believe it or not, right the way down here past the Minster. It's hard to believe now, isn't it? Yeah. You can't imagine, you think that's lunacy. And it must be so obvious that you'd want to pedestrianise this area. But until fairly recently, cars drove up and down here all day long. So it's lovely that, as I say, they will listen to these people, and we created this lovely walkway that we're doing now. So let's just see where it wants us to go next. So Minster Gates, go to Coffee Yard, okay. So we go down Stonegate now. And the Minster, we've just been through all the 4 gateways. So the white building that you saw there, that was one of the 4 gateways, the precinct. And this is another one called Minster Gates. So the area of Minster Gates was known as the area of printers, so as Bookbinders Alley, which I think is lovely. Gorgeous name, isn't it? Bookbinders Alley. And initially the church was really keen on printing, woodcut printing, souvenirs for the pilgrims. I've been to the Shrine of St William at York, chance to earn cash, of course, keep that money rolling in. But once the typeset printers came in, of course William Caxton and his like, became rather problematic, because suddenly people could write what they liked, and they could circulate those writings, and sometimes those writings were critical of the church. So it's like the beginning of the internet, really. It's the first great information revolution. The ability of people to print and distribute radical ideas that challenged the status quo, that challenged ways of thinking, rules, interpretations about what the church, the codes that it might say it lives by, but the way it behaves. Exposing what we might call now hypocrisy in the modern world. So a church that talks about poverty but lives like princes. These were the sorts of things that the pamphlets began to describe, and so the church was hugely fearful. It really hated the printing press from this point onwards, and did everything it could to repress them. But nonetheless, this area here, Stonegate, we've visited many times, talked about, was a thriving heart of printing and publishing. The number 35, they're about to pass through our ghost tours. We'll do another one of them soon. Next door was where the first English comic novel Tristram Shandy was published by Lawrence Sterne, who lived nearby in York. But each one of these had links to the printing and the publishing industry. We're about to turn down Coffee Yard. Famously on the corner, of course, we have the Printer's Devil, another piece of kind of physical architecture that reminds us of the links. So this is where Tristram Shandy was first published, here which is now J.W. Knowles. stained glass, those lights decorations. That's where the book was published in, I think, the 1730s. But we're heading down Coffee Yard now. We've been before. And of course we have the Printer's Devil. And the Printer's Devil was part of the story of the printing industry. That when printing produced errors, typos, words misspelt, etc., letters back to front, it wasn't the fault of the typesetters, those that laid out the letters in the trays. It was the printer's devils that would come in to the workshops on a night and create mayhem. So we're walking down Coffee Yard, and this is York's longest snickleway. It has the distinction of having 2 tunnels. So first one we'll just pass under on a kind of way in. I'm going to pass through a second one, and one of the lowest exits on the way out. This, of course, we've seen many times on these tours. Barley Hall. Recently, it was only discovered in the 1980s. So around the time this book was being first written, it was. So what's kind of interesting is he's done a cutaway of what this street actually looks like if you haven't got this frontage on. So this is where sort of passageways, and this was essentially hidden. It was a bit like the Beden Hall picture we showed you earlier. It was very, very tatty, very run down. It's only when they began to knock it down they realised that there was the substantially intact 14th century townhouse inside, which then was passed on to the Archaeological Trust and restored beautifully. Well, hopefully on this one, saying about recognising, you're getting a bit of a crossover of lots of different tours, because by following this route, we're kind of cutting across quite a few of the normal routes, but we're not doing what we normally kind of do. So hopefully you're going, oh yeah, that's that from that tour, and I remember that from that tour. But everything's very close together, isn't it, York?
It is,
yeah.
Yes, it is. We've walked about a mile and a quarter since we started, because I've got it on my watch.
Right. But we're about half a mile from where we started. It's all sort of circular. You sort of fall back on yourself. Because what we're doing is these are the alleyways and the byways that were designed to sort of get people in and out, goods and trades, whether it be foodstuffs, garments, whatever it was that was kind of being for sale. This is quite low, so do watch your head on the way out. Obviously, the people were a bit shorter back in the day. Now then, this comes out to here is one of York's most famous and notorious of streets. We are in Grape Lane. But if I was to tell you that Grape Lane was not the original name, it was actually Grope Lane, you wouldn't be surprised to hear this again was a red light district. And it wasn't actually Grope Lane, it was a good deal worse than that, and it's actually written in the book there. I'm not going to highlight it for those of a nervous disposition, but it's a fairly graphic description of what went on down here. Have you seen it?
No, not yet.
It's somewhere down here, so it does sort of jump out at you. So it's a very, very X-rated name in the medieval time, and people were very much plain speaking. But this was definitely an area where people would come from. Where are we going to? Finkle Street. Okay, right down here. They would come for late night assignations with ladies of ill repute, I think is the best way to describe it. But do get the book, have a look for it, and you can decide for yourself whether you think it should have been. I should have said it out loud. Yeah, you see what I mean?
That's not.
No, not for a daytime tour. Paul in Scotland, no doubt, would have read that out. It is a sort of pithier than I do. So this is Finkle Street, and Finkle is an Anglo-Saxon term which means bend. And basically, these Finkle Streets you find in a lot of towns. Is there one in Sunderland or?
I don't think so.
Okay, and what they were is they were routes into markets. And the reason they bent was that when you bring in livestock into a market, if they can see straight ahead, they'll get faster and faster and they'll run. But if you build a bend whereby they can't see, they walk really slowly. And so when obviously you're trying to get animals into pens, you want to control them, you don't want them to hurt themselves or to hurt you, building it in such a fashion that you see how you can't really see ahead. So that's what Finkle Street was to lead animals into a marketplace. And this is a livestock market in front of us. Into Hornpot, is it after this one? I'm guessing that's where it'll take us. How's it? So we're trying to work out which of the routes, because they're thick and fast around.
Thompson Square?
Yeah. That's all right.
And that's the next one.
I'm just trying to look at where I think it will. Is it? So just in Coffee Yard, Finkle Street, map 12. So is that map 12? You can see here it's not always obvious where we're to go. So it's wanting us to go. I think that's Hornpot Lane. I think what's
Silver Street?
Silver Street. Yeah. Okay. Huh? Ah, the Snickleways of York map. So you can see there, very much kind of celebrated today. So I think this will want us to go through Hornpot Lane. So the Hornpot, by the way, is so Hornpot was basically when they did excavations around here, because this area here was a marketplace. You see it's in that swoop there. I think that's what it means, following this round here. Oh no, was it wanted to? No, it doesn't. It wants us to go down here. Sorry, no, we'll come to back to that one. We'll come back. It's me not following the route properly. Slap on the wrist there, slap on the legs. We'll go on the outside. But yeah, Hornpot basically was because this was a livestock market here, and of course there's animals being sort of prepared, and obviously butchered. There's lots and lots of hooves and horns and bones, and a great pit of them was found in that lane. That's why it's called Hornpot Lane. So the antlers and so forth were found in a big kind of archaeological pit and dig. So Silver Street is this in front of us here. So I don't think we'll be down Silver Street on the tours for, so we're coming down the front now of St Sampson's, which is a disused church, but is now used as a centre for older people, sort of like a day centre, social centre for older people. See St Sampson up there glittering in gilt, looking lovely against the blue sky. And looks like we're going to the market. We're heading to the Shambles now, is it? So we're now on map 12 of the, and we're going down Jubbergate and into the Shambles. Yeah, so we're going to visit the Shambles. So for those that were groaning that we passed the Shambles last time, don't worry. Catherine and I are following the line. We're following the rules. Passing one of my favourite buildings over here on the left-hand side. Just one moment. Been a lot of things over the years, cafes and restaurants, but it's an absolute charming Tudor townhouse. Annoying van in front of it. Stopping is getting the dream shot, sadly. But is it wanting us to walk down Little Shambles, was it? But what a building this is. Yeah, we'll go down here. No, sorry, Little Shambles is this one, yeah. Even I'm getting them wrong. Two little roads in York. But isn't it gorgeous? Look at that, Girton Henry's. How beautiful is that? I love all this really intricate brickwork. And the brick tells us it is Tudor, rather than medieval. Doesn't really come in brickwork until the Tudor period. Slightly cheaper, but this being expensive property, they've used the opportunity to put in the various patterns. So they're using the brickwork to create external decor, which I think is just lovely. So I love that building. So we're in Little Shambles now. Shambles, of course, being the meat market. I think it'll want us to weave in and out with it on map 13. Yeah, it wants us to do the. So the next bit of the Shambles, I may have shown you before, but I don't think I've shown you all of them. And that is how the alleyways connect us with the livestock market, because this, in the medieval era, was obviously a livestock market. The Shambles, as I'm sure many of you all know, was a street of butchers. So this area here is where the animals were held. And so you needed ways in and out of the marketplace to bring animals, slaughter alleys, etc. And so there are a series of routes in and out. And so the next section of the Snickleways tour is taking us through sections of the Shambles and back out again. So got a wonderful snaking that we have. So just so you'll get your kind of Shambles fix. Linda's seeing it in watercolours, seeing it through your eyes. So no pressure. I'm sure you'll see one or two of these views and vistas on the way. We're back in the Shambles, but not for long. Because, as I say, the Shambles presents us with the opportunity to weave in and out. The first of our alleyways, or the next of our alleyways rather, is over here on the right hand side. Where is it? That one? There. So we're past Cheesecake City. It's not quite as busy as I thought it was going to be at Shambles.
Quieted down quite a bit from earlier.
So we're passing through. I love all this 700-year-old timbers that we encounter in the shambles. And so we're now back into the market. So again, ways of getting people and meat, goods, animals from their pens, whether they be purchased in the pens, led away, slaughtered, of course, and then butchered in the shambles. And so all these alleys that just lead us in and out of the market show the kind of connectivity between the shambles and the marketplace. Little ecosystem of meat, you see, because you don't want to slaughter animals. And so any vegetarians, and I do apologise, but talking history, not rather morality, you don't want to be slaughtering animals in front of other animals because that will freak them out. So you need discrete areas where you could take an animal on the quiet, swiftly dispatch it, and then from that point onwards, obviously, you're then back into sort of butchery mode. So another one just down here takes us down, doing their best to trip us up, block us with that door. Please close door. It's not been followed, but there we go. So right now this is like a food court. It's a great area if you're kind of in York, particularly as a groupie. You don't necessarily all want the same thing to eat. Really kind of good food is available here on a daily basis. The Harry Potter, Linda on there. The famous Harry Potter store of York. We've got a massive fan from New York online, Linda. So say hello from the shop that must be obeyed, is it? Hi Linda. Fantastic. Thank you. They are treated, of course they're treated, yeah, they've been treated and looked after, but it's a very, very good wood that they use in the first place. So hopefully, Linda, you'll catch them on the chat and you'll see they're all saying hello to you there. From York, in the shop that must not be named, all the way across to New York. And we are, I take it, we're across now into, what gate are we? St Crux? Yeah. So we're down into our next one. Just for Linda, there we go. There you go, no problem at all. Linda, so this is Whitmer-Watmergate Alley. So again, we visited this street before. Famously 1.5 Whitmer-Watmergate. The street, I'm just trying to see where we're going to out here. Oh, St Saviour Gate, oh how lovely. St Saviour Gate, one of my favourite streets that I hope to bring us down on York Unlocked weekend, because there's a street of so many wonderful places and spaces. Oh, you're right. Just a sec, you found the step. Oh, sorry about that. So we're crossing at the bottom, just for your bearings. We have Fossgate and Merchant Adventurers and the castle over on our right hand side. We're going straight across onto St Saviour Gate. And I'm seeing where this takes us, I really don't know. So this is I'm now on the journey as well. Oh, look at these flowers over here. Let's just take a moment to look at that. Aren't they just lovely? Isn't that just something?
Turn right at the bottom.
Turn right at the bottom, okay. So as ever, we always take time to see the flowers. Always stop and smell the flowers. Aren't they absolutely gorgeous colours? Do you like painted flowers?
Impression of.
Yeah. Tell you what, I'll just give you that. Let me just see where we're going to at the end, and then you can get your sketchbook out.
We're here, coming down from the background, and then.
Okay. Let's see if we get into the right. Stonebow, right. So Catherine very kindly has brought us a sketchbook along, and I asked her if she would mind sharing one or two images, just so we kind of we walk along, just so you can see. We tend to see the sort of finished articles and in isolation, but of course,
what we've got. Something I did for the coronation of King Charles.
Yep. Sorry, I just dropped a map.
Some of these are just sort of workshops and things I've done. They're not. This was from Kelsey's tour.
Kelsey's tour, yeah, in Spain. Oh, they're so pretty, so colourful.
And this was from Patrick in Chantilly.
Chantilly in France. How beautiful.
And Ian's taken us there.
One of Ian's tours.
And that was Lake Garda.
Lake Garda, Italy. Was that Kelsey as well?
No, that was Evia and.
Oh, Andrew here.
Yeah. These are just my own. These ones. This was trying 2 different techniques on the same photograph.
Oh, fancy you. Okay, let's walk on a little bit. Thank you. That is wonderful. So, let's see how we're doing for time. Ooh. Oh, hang on a second. I've knocked this down. Yes. I know. Sorry, we've just gone into. This book is slightly bigger than it looks. I should have brought a thin, skinny one, but. So another former church here in York, and York is full of former churches because there's basically so many of them. In the medieval period, it had been a massive centre of pilgrimage, and so consequently there was a vast number of religious houses. When the Reformation came and the monasteries were closed down, they simply didn't need all these churches, all these priory churches, and so a lot of them fell into other hands, uses. And this one is now the Dig Archaeological Adventure, which is fantastic. It's a place where young people can go and quite literally get their hands dirty and get into the soil and learn the tips and techniques of archaeology. So fantastic historical resource right here in the centre. But there's always a kind of use for these old churches. You know, it looks like, you know, there's a church in every street corner, which there was. But actually we've only got 19 now of approximately 40 that were in the city centre at the height of the medieval period. But this street here, beautiful, again, very, very quiet. I hope we'll visit this one on York Unlocked next month. St Saviour Gates Masonic Hall. We did the other Masonic Hall last time, so I hope to come to this one. But a street of real kind of quiet elegance. And a really beautiful kind of symmetry. So quite the opposite of what I was talking about earlier, where we had the kind of higgledy-piggledy individual design. Now we've got a much more planned, kind of measured approach to building. And so it wants us to turn right at the end, does it? Back to where we came. Okay, fantastic. It's a long way around that. He's designed a long route for us, but nice. We'll do our best to keep you entertained on the way. So Unitarian Chapel over here on the left-hand side as well. It's somewhere I hope to visit and take you around on York Unlocked, which I think date for your diary is. I've got the thing in my bag because York Unlocked, the brochure, is now out, and yet again I am the official live guy. So it is date for your diary, the 7th and the 8th of October. So I may well do 4 tours over that weekend, try and get in as many of the 70 open buildings in York. Remember last year? It's a fantastic opportunity to go where tour guides can boldly to boldly go. Anyway, into new areas, new places, and take some bits of York that are shut off normally through the year. So it's a nice opportunity to bring you down there. One of the less attractive buildings in York. I do try and spare you from some of the ugly buildings of York, but sometimes you can't avoid it. But there you go. Let's move straight across somewhere altogether more attractive. Old Walk House in front of us. The beautiful Black Swan pub, which is absolutely adorable. So was there something out of Hungate did it want us to go? Let's have a look. So,
Concourse Passage?
Yeah, I thought we might be going down there. So round, okay. So one of the beautiful old sort of coaching inns of York, the Black Swan. Made disco of an old church. That sounds fabulous. That does sound fabulous. There's one in London as well, down in Fulham. I don't know if it's still there. It used to be called the church. Australians, because they all lived at Earl's Court and Barons Court down that way. It's called the church. I don't know if it's still there, but it was a former church in Fulham, and a very riotous bar full of Australians and Kiwis. Great fun. Good. I'm glad you love York Unlocked, because that's back in just a few weeks' time. So we also went there, St Anthony's Hall last year on York Unlocked. But this time it wants us to walk up Stonebow. I think we need to cross over because is it Black Horse Package?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's that one down there. So one of the perhaps less well sort of developed, less touristy areas, although increasingly now this area, there's a Moxie Hotel being developed on our left-hand side, and this area here, Hungate, now is a lot of holiday apartments, and so it's all sort of smartening up. But for a long time, this was just little bit dilapidated, sort of post-industrial, hadn't really kind of found its new kind of form of usage. But now actually, it all looks kind of rather sort of smart around here. It's definitely kind of changing look and feel, and that's the thing with York is it's not set in stone. It's always evolving. Hot air balloon look, yeah, fantastic. Big telecoms mast. This was the British Telecom office for many years. I think they've moved out. Obviously, the mast is still there. But Stonebow's not a place that makes the heart beat faster normally. It's not a normal place that you'd bring people on a tour. So I guess it's nice to run a one-off to say, let's bring. You down to see some other places that you wouldn't kind of normally see, because the part of this, as I say, really is about seeing these alleyways and getting as many of them into our hour tour. We've got another 10 minutes, so we'll see how many more. Now that hold that thought like Yorkshire puddings, because if you come on Malton tour tomorrow, which is now earlier than scheduled, because we're going to Thornton-le-Dale as well, then we're going to be hearing about Yorkshire puddings. So if that's not enough to bring you to Malton, I don't know what is. But looking forward to that tomorrow. So tomorrow's a double header. I very rarely do double tours, but tomorrow I am doing both Malton and Thornton-le-Dale.
Oh wow!
So
Linda knows about Thornton-le-Dale. She's got my painting.
Well, there you go. So Linda, Catherine just saying, if you couldn't hear that, knows all about Thornton-le-Dale, because Linda, we believe, has got an artwork somewhere in her property from Catherine.
I think that was right. I'm sure
Yeah.
that was the one she said. Yeah.
So that's where we are tomorrow, and let's cross over, because Black Horse Passage is just passage. Put my teeth in. Let's cross over. It's just over here. So at Garden Place, and this is the much unloved Stonebow house building. York's concrete carbuncle. Obviously they wanted a slice of kind of brutalist 60s concrete architecture.